You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here at Kaseya Center from the Miami Heat Watch Party with David Ramil, both of us credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day for daily content on the Heat. Click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you are following us on your podcast app. We just wrapped up a 3-hour live stream here at the draft party, but we've got more to say about Miami's pick. Kasparas Jakucionis, potential lottery pick, but he slid in the draft. The Heat get him at 20. We're going to talk about how this affects the roster and what this means for the rest of Miami's offseason in a second. But first, a little bit more on what went down here. Right before Miami's pick at 20, Walter Clayton Jr. goes, Nolan Traore goes at 19. Those guys go the 2 picks prior to Miami, 2 picks that we thought could be on Miami's board. Did not have Jakucionis on Miami's board. In fact, I don't even know Miami expected him to be there at 20. They didn't work him out before the draft. They had obviously done enough due diligence to feel comfortable with taking him. He was a consensus top 10-ish guy, fell to 20, dealt with an arm injury at the end of his college career, not the most explosive athlete. Maybe that's the reason why he slid, but nobody had him falling this far. And so the Heat get the 6'6" point guard, high feel for the game, pick and roll ball handler, not super flashy, but very effective as a ball handler, and can do a lot of other things on the court. I think the Heat addressed a need in terms of playmaking. They got a guy with size, and they might have gotten the steal of the draft, considering where a lot of people thought this guy was going to go.
You never know. We'll never know exactly what happened. But then sometimes it almost seems like a sneak gets attached to that player's name, and other people want to stay away and shy away from making that selection. But to Miami's credit, they went against what they typically do, and they wound up selecting a player that I don't think they had necessarily on their board, that they probably didn't expect to do. So we talked about this in recent episodes between Gerard Butler and Justice Winslow,
Right.
The two most glaring examples of when a player has dropped into Miami's lap there. Butler or Bustis, which one will Jakucionis be?
Bustis or Butler? It's a great call. And one or two things happen when a guy like this falls to you at 20, right? You either wonder what's going on with this guy. Miami clearly has intel on this guy. Again, you don't take him unless you feel comfortable with it. At the same time, or you could say, "Oh my God, I can't believe this guy fell this far." Another reason for him falling potentially here is he had 2 natural landing spots when you looked at mock drafts: 8 to Brooklyn, who was in desperate need of a playmaking ball handler type, or 11 to Portland, who was also kind of in need of that natural point guard who doesn't necessarily need to shoot the ball a ton, who has some size, might be able to fit next to Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons, or not Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe. Anthony Simons is a Celtic now. Well, Brooklyn went with the other tall pick and roll ball handler out of BYU. They went with Jaeger Demon at 8. And then Portland, instead of making a selection at 11, traded that pick to Memphis, who moved up to go get Cedric Howard. So all of a sudden, and then Portland takes the that Chinese center at 16, which shocked everybody. So at that point, there wasn't really a natural landing spot. So it's not that I think teams were out on Kasparas, but maybe he was just like the second guy on everybody's board, and he just ended up falling to Miami. I mean, maybe the more surprising thing was Utah and then Brooklyn going with Walter Clayton Jr. and then Nolan Traore before him, but they clearly wanted scoring, and that's not what Kasparas brings to the table. He brings ball handling, playmaking to the table, and you look at those teams, whether it was Brooklyn already addressing that with Jaeger Demon, or Washington doing whatever it is that they're doing, and all these other teams. And Utah has a bunch of ball, like they took Isaiah Collier last year in the first round. He's more of a playmaker type. There just wasn't really a need with those picks between where he was supposed to go and where Miami ultimately took him. Well, let's do it. Quick blue notebook.
That's what I'm doing. I'm taking 10 blue notebooks with me to Malibu with my wife. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. 10 blue notebooks to Malibu. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. 10 blue notebooks to Malibu.
My life.
Blue notebook style, pros, cons, and comps. Let's do it because we didn't do one on Kasparas Jakucionis. prior to the draft, because again, we did not think he was going to be there for Miami at 20. What I like about Jakucionis, because I did do some work on him prior to the draft, and we've definitely been doing some work on him here after the selection. He is a high feel, natural playmaker, unselfish player. He's going to walk into Miami right away as their best passer. I think he walked into that locker room as the best passer on the team. That's not hyperbole. He walks onto the team as the best passer. He thrived in pick and roll situations. He was heavily used, high usage guy in those pick and roll situations. Took a decent amount of shots, but really got the ball moving in that Illinois offense. And you think about where Lithuanian guy, right? You think about Domantas Sabonis is Lithuanian. There's been a lot of guards out of Lithuania over the years. They all kind of have that same kind of bouncy, squirrely kind of game, right? They're not going to blow you away with athleticism, but they get to where they need to go on the court. It's a lot of elbows. It's a lot of footwork. It's a lot of wiggles. It's a lot of side-to-side stuff, but it's the kind of creativity that Miami otherwise just doesn't have. A natural playmaker who's able to also just read the floor. He reads the floor at a very high level. He knows when the help is coming and where it's coming from. He's able to make that skip pass. He's able to make that right read. And it's the kind of thing, he's a player who's just going to walk into any offense and increase the flow and increase the ball movement. And I think that's something Miami desperately needed last year. And I think he could do that at a pretty decent level right away. The other thing I like about him, 6'6" with a 6'8" wingspan. He's a guard with size. And he's somebody that I think could play with Tyler Hero in that backcourt. He could play with Davion Mitchell in that backcourt. Davion Mitchell, defensively, very strong, stout, I would say, not tall. Tyler Hero, a little bit taller at 6'4", 6'5", not strong defensively. I'm not saying that Jakucionis is going to be a great defender. I think there's definitely some concerns on in that end. But with his height and his wingspan, he's at least providing size. And you see teams like Oklahoma City, Minnesota, even the Lakers, after the Luka Doncic deal, where even defensively, they were number one in the league defensively for a period, like a month after making the Luka trade. When you could just put size out onto the floor, that does have an effect on your defense, just in terms of arm length and wingspans and getting into passing lanes and making things harder to get over the top and all that kind of stuff. I like that. They haven't had a guy. You think about the best guards in the league, or some of the up-and-coming guards in the league. SGA at 6'6", 6'7". Tyrese Halliburton, same size, 6'6", 6'7". Luka Doncic at his height at 6'7". Kasparas isn't that big, as tall. He's 6'6", 6'5", and 3/4, whatever we're calling it. We're running up to 6'6" there. But he's big. He's a big ball handler. He's a big playmaking ball handler type. And in terms of the cons, the big swing skill for him is going to be the outside shot. He shot 41% at Illinois before the arm injury, and then it dipped after that. But two things that I like about him, he took more than 5 3-point attempts per game, even after the injury. And he shot 85% from the free throw line, which is a really good indicator of field and shooting touch. I'm a believer in that outside shot. And if that outside shot comes around and he can come off those pick and rolls and pull up into threes and even be a catch and shoot guy when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, then he doesn't become the next Josh Giddey. He's something a little bit more than that. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Who does this impact the most on the roster now that you've got Jakucionis there at point guard? Is he somebody that walks in right away as a starter? Does he compete? We can't say that for sure now, but does he, in your mind, compete right away for a starting job?
I think so, just because he provides an obvious area of need there. And I know it's unlikely, and I can almost hear a large swath of our fan base saying, well, Eric Spoelstra doesn't play rookies or player guys who don't defend at a high level. Maybe that's the case. Even Tyler Hero, who struggled defensively as a rookie, he got a lot of playing time, but it was all coming off the bench, obviously. So I don't know where Jakucionis fits necessarily, but if you were answering that original question about who he impacts the roster most, I'd say it's Tyler, because now the ball is going to be out of his hands, allowing Jakucionis to thrive, and Tyler can revert back to being the off-ball option that he has been prior, and I think he'll thrive in that regard. And I think you're going to see a number of players benefit from having a guy like Jakucionis in the roster, but in terms of what Hero can do offensively, I think it'll help him, allow him to go back to his natural scoring role with the added playmaking chops that he's developed in recent seasons.
It's a great shout, right? Tyler Hero as your primary playmaker, obviously limited. We've seen this pretty much 2 years in a row now after the injury to Jimmy Butler 2 years ago, and then having Tyler Hero in that role in that first round series against Boston, and then obviously after the Jimmy Butler trade, just doesn't really work. But as a secondary ball handler and a guy who could shoot off the catch a little bit more, I mean, we've talked for years about how talented he is in that regard.
Yeah.
That's what got him to the All-Star game last season. He's a three-point contest winner. Right, this is a guy who you want taking as many catch and shoot threes as possible. I argue he should be taking 10 catch and shoot threes a game, and I don't even think that might not even be enough. Right. He's an elite catch and shoot 3-point shooter. It's really hard to take catch and shoot threes when you're on the ball all the time, and that's what he was toward the end of last season. And when he gets the ball in his hands as a primary shot creator, he starts drifting into the mid-range a little bit more, and then all those bad habits start to crop back up. And frankly, Miami needed all of it last year because our offense was such a mess. Yeah. But with Jakucionis here now, he could be on the ball. The vision, at least now, who knows what happens day one, but the vision at least would be having him on the ball, having Tyler Hero play off the ball and more in that natural scoring role and catch and shoot role. The other guy it really impacts, I think, is both. I'm going to lump them together here. Bam Adebayo and Kel'el Ware.
Yes, absolutely.
A big look, Bam. There was problems with Bam's offense early last year for a lot of reasons. And it's not only this reason, but a big reason was the fact that nobody could throw a pass to him. Yeah. Entry pass, lob, pick and roll. None of that stuff was there. Bam isn't the best ball handler, so just throwing him the ball at the free throw line and having him go create. He's really just a one dribble pull up guy in that zone. Yeah. And that's fine. And it's great when that shot is going in. But when that free throw line jumper isn't falling for Bam, the rest of his offense just kind of dissolves. And he doesn't really have the ball handling skill to just even drive by a bigger center and get to the basket, right? Because he's a little bit slow in that, and teams can crash and take that away from him. Having a guy who can actually have the ball in his hands and just let Bam roll to the basket, and then we're using that athleticism and his above the basket leaping ability and all that stuff, that's going to be huge. Ironically, Miami's best lob passer last year was Terry Rozier, and he couldn't get on the court. Right. So now if you can get Jakucionis in there, and he's able to get on the court and he's able to throw that pass, that's going to have a cascading effect not only on Bam's efficiency, but Miami's offensive efficiency. Yep. And ditto for Kel'el Ware. Kel'el Ware is a second-year center who desperately needs to be playing above the basket as much as he can. We know the catch radius. He's got great hands, all that stuff. Played tight end in high school, like all this stuff. Okay, this guy can feed him the ball.
Well, we saw him thrive in summer league last year with Isaiah Stevens averaging, what was it, like 15 assists a game
something crazy
like that. He was putting up these incredible numbers, being able to feed Ware and everybody else in that summer league team. And I think it's obviously been something that Miami has lacked offensively. And so, yeah, it's a good call putting the two bigs together because I think both of them are going to have opportunities there to get easier looks at the rim. My concern with Jakucionis, and maybe it's a little too early for that, is
no, let's do it.
Does he have the kind of if the lack of athleticism might be a concern? Is he sneaky enough to be able to create space at the NBA level? Can he get the looks that he had typically gotten at the collegiate level at the NBA level? I would go so far as to say yes. I think because of his size, because of his vision, I think defenses aren't going to be necessarily keying in on him to the same degree. And I think he's going to have those opportunities as long as he has the kind of scorers around him. I think those playmaking chops are still going to stand out even against NBA level defense. And so I'm not as concerned. I know a lot of fans already think, oh, well, he's a European player. Maybe he's not as athletic. I don't think it's going to matter as much. We're going to see him find ways to stand out. It's not necessarily always about elite athleticism. You have to be comfortable playing at your own pace, and that's something that I think Jakucionis does at an extremely high level, and he can unlock everybody else's ability as long as they can conform to that pace. And that's going to be the huge question mark, is getting the reps necessary with Miami's top players, whether in the starting lineup or coming off the bench, in order to get him into his particular rhythm so that they're kind of be unlocked and be able to get the kind of looks that they've been desperately looking for.
Yeah, we'll see how the rest of the offseason plays out, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But there's playing time available for him, all right? Like the reps are there. It's a little bit different than what Kel'el Ware was dealing with last year. It's maybe more similar to what Jaime Jaquez Jr. walked into as a rookie, where there was just minutes to be gobbled up. Yep. And there's clearly minutes to be gobbled up in the backcourt there for Jakucionis. in terms of the cons and the athleticism, that was a knock on him, right? He's not a top end athlete. Okay, I don't really care. These European guys, it's all angles and elbows.
Yeah.
And you watch the film with this guy, he gets to where he wants to go. And I don't want to make the comparison, so I'm not going to, but I'm going to say some names. Luka Doncic,
There you go.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander,
There you go.
Cade Cunningham. These guys were not top athletes. Actually, the knock on them, even Cade as a number 1 pick, there was concerns. Is he athletic enough? Luka fell because of questions about his overall athleticism. But when you have that
He
feel,
was traded to the Los Angeles Lakers because of his overall athleticism.
and it's some other things, and not necessarily his fault. The athleticism part. Look, if the best athletes were the best basketball players, this job would be really easy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's figuring out the guys with feel. And when you watch Jakucionis play, he gets to where he wants to go. Now, the concern there would be that was at the college level. What does it look like at the NBA level? Fair concern. You never know. You never know, right? D'Angelo Russell was one of those guys. He gets to where he wants to go, not a great athlete. Didn't really get to where he wanted to go. Well, he kind of did. He just always wanted to be in the mid-range. Jakucionis is a guy who does want to get to the basket. He wants to do the Dragic thing, the Nash thing, where he gets under the rim and kind of peels out. Yeah. He wants to get guys involved. He wants to draw a defense. He wants to get that dump-off pass, that underhand dump-off pass, the over the back, behind the back. He could throw that. He's got every pass in the book. He could throw all of them. So I think I like that. The other con with him, the swing skill is the outside jumper. We mentioned before the percentages, the fact that he's a good free throw shooter. I'm less concerned about that. And it goes back to what we talked about in terms of Miami's overall preparation and strategy and approach to these drafts, is that they don't really care about the outside jumper. Kel'el Ware, Nikola Jovic, and Jaime Jaquez Jr. all came into the league with questions with their over their outside jumper. They don't care about that. Miami believes, rightly or wrongly, that they can fix it, that they can do a Haywood Highsmith, that they could do a Caleb Martin and say, get into our system for a couple of years. We'll make you at least a serviceable three-point shooter, if not an elite one, the way that Caleb Martin was for that one playoff run. And so they believe it. And by the way, you look at the Jakucionis jumper, it's not broken. The free throw line, shooting 85% from the free throw line is a great, great, great indicator. I'm not as concerned about it. Defensively, there can be concerns. There can be concerns there, but I like at least that he's got size. And if they could teach him to just buy into a system and play in his space, then as long as he's in the right spot, then there's a decent amount of size there where he can at least be a factor defensively and not an enormous negative. At least that's the projection. But look, it's a guy that was picked that was 7th on the Ringers big board, 11th by ESPN. He falls all the way to 20 at Miami. We have other questions to get to there. We got a big report from Shams on right after the Heat pick, linking Miami to Jonathan Kuminga. We'll get to that here next on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Skims. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. And let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear, whether it's fit or comfort or finding the right style for me. And Skims has changed all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with a perfect balance of comfort and style. I tried the Skims boxer brief, and let me tell you, I'll be hooked. I'm hooked. You'll be hooked as well. These are perfect for any active lifestyle. They move with you. They never lose their shape, and they stay in place all day. And whether you're working out or just running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear you'll ever own. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing, almost like you're wearing nothing at all. So shop Skims Men's at skims.com. That's skims.com. Let them know we sent you. As you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. That's skims.com. We'll be right back.
So right after the Miami Heat made their pick at 20, Shams jumps on to ESPN and says that there is interest between Miami and Jonathan Kuminga. This is a report that keeps popping up. Anthony Slater from The Athletic had reported earlier on Wednesday morning that there was legitimate interest that Miami had in Jonathan Kuminga. The Miami Herald echoed that, even though they said that maybe that interest had been a little overstated. But then Shams jumps back on and says, nope, there's real interest there. What do you make of this? I mean, this is a team that had just been involved in 37-year-old Kevin Durant, and now they're looking at 22, 23-year-old Jonathan Kuminga.
It's a pivot, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think Durant fits the obvious need in terms of we have to have a 1A superstar. that can be the engine of our team, the focal point for everything that goes on. This shows that, at least to me, in combination with the Jakucionis selection, that it's going to revert to much more of an egalitarian offense. It's not going to be necessarily run by any one player, because that one player isn't on the roster, nor is he going to be available anytime soon. And so you've got to find different ways of unlocking offense much more easily to find ways to win. So you get a playmaker, you get a top scorer in Kuminga, and all of a sudden they're much more complementary of one another alongside guys like Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero and Kel'el Ware. And so that's, to me anyway, the vision that I see from this front office is we're not going to get 1A right now because 1A just doesn't exist. He's not going to be available.
Right.
We can't acquire him. We don't have the pieces in place, whatever. That being the case, at least we have somebody who can set the table for everybody else. And if we have to pivot once 1A does appear, then we'll pivot, and the contracts won't be so unwieldy that they can't be packaged for X player, whoever that might be years from now. Or, if you can sign trade or however it might work out.
I would go so far as maybe they don't even care about that anymore. It's like, look, we struck out on Donovan Mitchell, Damian Lillard, Kevin Durant 4 different times. Like, F this. Like, they just,
I don't know about
it
that.
might, in a roundabout way, I do think their decision to back off on Kevin Durant, which is ultimately what they did. They didn't go all in on Kevin Durant, so they backed off. Was they looked at themselves and they looked at the team and they said, okay, if we trade all of it except for Kel'el Ware, but if we give them all the picks and all the young players that they're asking for in order to get Durant, are we the team that we want to be? And I think they had a sober moment and said no. And I think that was a hard truth. I think that was hard for this front office to swallow, but I think they were right. I think they ultimately made the decision of, even if we add Kevin Durant to Bam and Tyler Hero, a big three that we like and that we had talked ourselves into, we don't have the rest of the stuff that we need to compete in the Eastern Conference. And they obviously made this decision before Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles. But at that moment, that's the decision that they made. And to your point, like, the next Kevin Durant isn't out there. Kevin Durant's on Houston now.
Right.
So the only real logical step forward is, once you decide that if you're not good enough, it's not a rebuild, right? I guess the next logical thing would be, okay, blow it up. I know there's a lot of Heat fans. Blow it up, trade Bam, trade Tyler, start over. Miami's not going to do that. What are they actually going to do? Maybe a soft rebuild, and that might not even be the right phrasing.
Yeah.
But a look at young players and looking at just acquiring talent. And that's why I kind of say, you know what, F it. They're just like, is Kuminga the number one guy on a great offense? Is Jakucionis the number one guy on a great offense? I don't know. I don't care. I just know that they're more talented than some of the guys we have on this roster. And if we get them and we acquire them, that would be adding talent to a roster that desperately needs talent. And frankly, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with this. And you and I talked on our live stream. We're not the biggest believers in Jonathan Kuminga. It's a little frustrating when you have to beg a guy to rebound. He did not fit in Golden State's offense. Also, the Golden State offense, the Warriors offense, extremely complicated. It's very hard to play in Steph Curry's world, right? If you don't fit in, then you fit out, and it doesn't work. And Kuminga fit out. It doesn't mean he's a bad player. It just means he didn't fit in that situation. And I argued for a long time they should have never drafted him, because it was an obvious situation where he wasn't going to fit. The talent is undeniable with that guy, though.
Right.
And if he can come in and explore some of those the corners in that room that he wasn't allowed to explore, and Miami's saying, go ahead, do it here.
Right.
We've got the space, we got the touches, we got the shots. Go ahead and take them, and let's figure this out together. And he's in this developmental project or this developmental program. I'm at least intrigued enough, depending on what the cost would be. And I think that says a lot about Miami's direction. You look at 27-year-old Bam, 25-year-old Tyler Hero, 22, 23-year-old Jonathan Kuminga, 19-year-old Jakucionis, Davion Mitchell, who we expect to come back fresh off of his rookie contract, Jovic, Ware, Jaquez. This is a team that's being built through the draft right now.
Right. No, I think that's a lot of good points there. Look, Kuminga might not seem like the obvious fit for Miami right away. And it is a pivot. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at here, not just a selection of Jakucionis, but the kind of the
it's
idea.
A great word.
And you have to look at it from even what happened with KD. It's like, you know what? That superstar is not there. So here we pivot. We move because we don't want to stay stagnant. And I think that that's what this is too. This is a way to continue winning without sacrificing the future or any kind of long-term assets in terms of players or picks. And so that doesn't mean that they're reluctant to make those moves. It's just that the right move isn't available for them right now. And maybe that's what they saw in KD too, that, what sacrificing Kel'el wasn't worth it for a player of KD's age. I might personally disagree, but the front office, you have to trust that they have the experience to make these kinds of choices. And so now they've pivoted to a different type of team structure or a different way of team building, and they're going to be changing things around their approach. It's not about necessarily getting that 1A. It's about building. Maybe if Tyler is your second, if Tyler is potentially the second best player on a championship contending team, then you have to look at him from that perspective. But you know what? You can still build 2 through 9, 2 through 10, and have 7 really solid players backing him up. And that's fine. And at some point, 1A will shake down and he will become available. Mm-hmm. And you have to trust that Riley and the rest of the front office will pounce at that opportunity once it comes up.
Or maybe you just found one in Kasparas Jakucionis. Adam Simon telling reporters he did not expect him to be there at 20. Join the club, Adam Simon. Nobody did. Surprising night here at Kaseya Center for the NBA draft. We'll have a ton more on Miami's offseason going forward. But to David's point, I just want to echo it one more time. The pivot. Pivot was the exact right word there. For everybody that wanted Miami to choose a direction, it might not be obvious in terms of big blockbuster trade for Kevin Durant or blowing it up. But this pick, keeping this pick here, taking this guy who's projected to be in the lottery, and then all the smoke around Jonathan Kuminga, it's at least hinting at a direction maybe being chosen here. But again, we will have a ton more on what happens next in Miami's offseason coming up. More on Locked On Heat in the coming days. For now, we just wrapped up a 3-hour live stream and another episode, so we're going to call it a night, David. Well, not you. You have the national show to recap the entire NBA draft. But for now, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day.